We're going live. We're live. Oh my gosh, we're live.
There we go.
So now we can talk about how I haven't seen
Now
it
you can ask.
yet.
Now you can ask.
I don't yet have a subscription to CBS All Access. So
the first one's on YouTube now, though, I believe.
What?
Yeah, I think they put the first one on YouTube as like your first taste is free.
I really want to watch it, but now I feel like I can't watch it because then it will make me download the start my free trial. I don't know. Now you got me all worried and stressed because I really want to see this show. It does look really good and it's getting lots of great reviews from people. So what do I do?
Just have to take everything, Lori. All of it.
All of it. All right. Good afternoon. Today is Friday, January 31st, last day of January 2020. And today we're going to be talking about Apple earnings, iPhone rumors, and a whole lot more because this is the iMore Show. And joining us today is our expert in-house therapist, head of anxiety-videos.com, Georgia Dow. How are you doing today?
I'm good. So I have my secretary at work does a little plushie. She makes plushies, like little tiny squishy guys. And she made me.
Get out.
Yeah.
Elaine from Seinfeld shoving, get out.
No, exactly. So he's at my office.
If you're just listening to this, it is a tiny plushie. It looks like it maybe is 2 inches tall at the most of a baby Yoda.
It's a baby Yoda. It's about this big.
Oh, it's bigger. Okay. It looks tiny in the picture, but
it's tiny more like on that. Yeah, but no, he's not minute.
6 inches maybe tall.
This is the way.
About six by 5, I would expect.
Oh,
yeah. So I'm really overly excited.
I love that while I guess Disney dropped the ball on getting toys into our hands, people have just taken it upon themselves to make their own Baby Yodas because we're all so in love with this. I know there are some Baby Yoda haters out there who are probably rolling their eyes right now, but Baby Yoda is so cute. I love it so much.
So you are bad people. I'm just going to say it.
Well, I mean, you can't blame them. That little character became such a phenomenon so fast that it's all people talked about during, while we were all watching The Mandalorian. I'm sure that people were getting really sick of the memes and all the stuff when, so many people hadn't even watched the show and they're just like, what's this stupid Baby Yoda thing? So I can't hold it against them for just feeling like.
No, Baby Yoda is the way.
I will hold it against them. I small like.
So earlier this week on Tuesday, Apple had its first quarter of 2020 earnings call.
Did you transcribe the whole thing, Lori Gill?
I did.
God.
It was.
You're such a beast.
It was quite a day. I think I was done about 5 o'clock with
your time, Pacific time.
My time. 5 o'clock Pacific time, transcribing it. So it's 8 o'clock Eastern time. And my brain hurt. I didn't want to do anything after that. I just was like, I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch old TV shows. Someone else has to make me dinner. I'm not doing anything.
You were done. You were crispy.
Yeah, my brain was definitely.
So for those of us that are not going to be reading it, can you give us the juicy bits?
Read the whole thing, Lori. Just read out the whole thing to us now. I'm
going to read it top to bottom.
You have to read it in a voice then. Read it in Darth Vader's voice while you do it.
Good afternoon. Actually, no. I'm gonna have Renee kind of give us the overview, because you actually also have an amazing vector video, which everybody should watch, about just kind of generally the idea of the iPhone 11 and how the naysayers were kind of poo-pooing this phone, but it ends up turning out to be the most popular iPhone. I think maybe the most popular. Definitely not ever, but it certainly was the most popular iPhone in the fourth quarter of 2019.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I feel like every year we go through these cycles where, like, right before a new iPhone comes out, in some way, shape, or form, we're told that it's going to be a disaster. Like in the early years, it was, oh, Apple's canceled their orders for displays. They're not going to make that many. They don't think people are going to buy them. Oh, there's a problem with the chip production. There's not going to be anything available. And there was a video made a long time ago. I forget the guy's name the guy from CNBC Jim Cramer made a video where he's like, yeah, this is what happens. You have a hedge fund and you're overexposed and you call up and you say, hey, I've got a rumor about the new iPhone not being ready. And the Apple news blogs, they just love this. They just pick that up. And then you tell a friend, and all of a sudden everyone's shorting their Apple stock and you can make your put. And it's just complete market manipulation. But I started complaining about that. A lot of people started complaining about it. And they started to sort of move on. It was so embarrassing with the iPhone 10 where everyone's like, Apple's not selling them. And Apple's like, super sales, yo. And then last year there was a problem. There was a problem with demand for the iPhone, specifically in China. And Apple famously put out that open letter to customers saying, sales in China are having problems because of XYZ reasons. And we're like, that's it. iPhone is over. We told you. We were like a clock. We were stuck on 12 forever, but now finally it's 12. At long last, we're getting our revenge. And it turned out like the iPhone XS was misaligned. And, I talked about this too. Apple made the iPhone $1,000. And then if you got the XR, it was cheaper, but then you weren't getting the real iPhone. You were getting the XR. And it just never made any sense to me. So a bunch of people, again, I made a video on this, like just make the iPhone $700 and then have like a premium iPhone on top of it. And nobody cares. Nobody minds if you spend more money. They think, you idiot, I got everything you got for less money. It's all about how people feel about themselves. And they did that with the iPhone 11. But then a bunch of tech pundits are like, oh, the iPhone 11 is boring. It's not shaped like a waffle iron. I mean, I don't know what Apple's doing. They're losing it. There's such competition. You got to skip it. No one's going to buy this. And now Apple said the iPhone 11 was their most popular phone, every week out of the entire quarter. And the iPhone 11 Pro and the 11 Pro Max, the second and third most popular phone, because it turns out some people do want to spend that much money for a phone to get if the features are compelling to them. So to me, it just, again, and there's never any consequences, because the same people right now are getting ready to write articles about why the iPhone 12 is going to be super mega ultra lame, and they get away with it, or they make a video saying how it's terrible, and then, I was wrong about it, and it's really great. No, I was wrong. It was really terrible. So, but I think the key takeaway here is that Apple once again increased sales of iPhones by 8%. They don't break down the numbers anymore, so it's hard to tell if that's just making more money from iPhones or selling more iPhones. But they're selling a hell of a lot of iPhones. The Mac and the iPad were down slightly, so it's still a worry. Oh, Apple's making too much money off iPhone. You got to make more money off iPhone. Oh, now you're making too much money. But services, wearables, watch, AirPods, all those things are crushing it. So Apple had they had the best quarter from a company ever.
Yeah, and there was actually there was also a recent report from Bloomberg that said that the iPhone is actually possibly either making the same numbers or even maybe overtaking Samsung as the most popular iPhone. One quote from their article was, industry trackers on Thursday released estimates that show the iPhone maker close to matching or surpassing its Korean rival in shipments during the pivotal holiday quarter. So that's huge, because the iPhone has never been the most popular phone, even though it's a weird thing, and it has to do with Android, right? Because there are many thousands of different Android devices out there being made by a bunch of different people, so it's kind of split. But the iPhone is only made by Apple, and it only has iOS on it, so it's always just been singular. So even though it's always been hugely popular, it never really counted as being the most popular.
It's really badly reported. Like they'll report on iPhone versus Android phones, but what they should be reporting on is iOS versus Android phones, and then Apple versus Samsung and LG and Huawei phones. And there's always way more Android phones, because like you said, so many Android vendors. But Apple in certain markets like the US and other places, often the iPhone is the 1, 2, and 3 most popular phone. It's just every other one of those phones is Android.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's like this huge variety of phones that are running an Android device, but they're made by a bunch of different OEMs. Remind me what that stands for.
Original equipment manufacturers. And
Thank
sadly,
you.
a lot of them don't make any money, which is why like they keep suffering, because in order to compete, they cut the price. But when you cut the price, people aren't loyal to you, they're loyal to the price. And then they'll
Yes.
always buy the cheapest thing, not necessarily your thing. So it's a bit of a risky strategy.
Yeah. So this report coming out from Bloomberg, obviously these are not official numbers because for one thing, Apple doesn't report their official numbers. I think just like you said, Renee, most companies don't. But it's based on estimates of sales, and it sounds like, Apple they are the lead horse, or they are at least neck and neck with the lead horse now, which is something I don't think they ever have been before for iPhone sales. So it's really great to see their kind of big boon for this year. I think everyone was sort of expecting Apple to come into the first quarter report kind of saying, well, we did really good, but it wasn't quite as good as we thought it was going to be, but it was really good. And they just hit the ground running and were saying, actually, we've had the best quarter ever. We have record sales. The iPhone 11 specifically, Renee, I think you're right on the way they've marketed that as that's the standard phone, and you can get a more advanced phone, but it is the standard phone. But I have to eat my hat or eat crow, or however you put that, because you two might remember me complaining that I didn't like the idea of calling a phone a pro phone because it's a phone.
And then they did AirPods Pro just to get back at you.
It was directly against Lori.
Apple's like, oh yeah, Lori, we're gonna call everything Pro.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're gonna have to say it all the time.
Wait until you meet Apple Music Pro.
Oh no, there's so many
Apple TV Pro.
There are so many circumstances under which I do see a Pro something working, and until the iPhone 11 came out, I just kept thinking, there's no such thing as a Pro phone. Everybody uses their phone the same way. And I'm not going to lie, I do still feel that way. But I think they succeeded in marketing the iPhone 11, right? That's everyone's phone. And if you want to spend the extra couple $100, you get a slightly better, I'm going to say that, slightly better screen and a slightly better camera. In fact, it's not even a better camera. It's a camera with one additional feature. Yeah. So your value is actually in the iPhone 11, not in either of the Pro models.
It's good for marketing, right?
Yeah.
Because then you don't feel like you're not getting the right phone. There's a, Pro model, so you don't feel bad that you're buying this model. The Pro is for if you're really going to be using your phone for a lot of special things. So that's why it's so expensive. And then everyone can't say that the base model of the iPhone is this expensive. It's so exorbitant, and now it's an elitist model. And then they'll make articles of, the reason that they're so far ahead of the revenue that they were, over expectations of, which is like $3 billion over what they were expected to make. It's a lot of money, which is great for Apple. It's because, they're now gutting their customers, and people are buying it because of that. So I think that it works also on a marketing level that, you don't have to worry if you're not getting the Pro model, if you're just wanting to get the base regular model, which is an awesome, amazing phone.
Which is what most people want. And that's the key. Positioned right and explained to people right. When you buy the iPhone 11, you're buying an iPhone that is a couple $100 cheaper than last year's iPhone. Like Apple dropped the price of the iPhone. That's what they did, right?
Especially the first upgrade. Like the first memory upgrade is only $50 more, which is tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you see, so Lori, I could make an argument justifying Pro for the iPhone. I could say it gives you more flexibility with the options, and it lets you preview HDR video. Like I could attempt to make an argument. I can make no argument for PowerBeats Pro or AirPods Pro. Like that to me is just, we need a word. I'm going to use Pro. Okay, put it on everything.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about that. People do throw around the word Pro a lot.
You're just jogging.
In the case of the AirPods, though, they had to distinguish a difference between the two, right? Because they are definitely different.
Look at Lori on the Pro side of the argument.
They didn't have to use the word Pro though for the AirPods though. They could have just said like AirPods noise canceling
Extreme.
Or something like that, so.
Yeah.
AirPods Extreme. I would have gone for that.
AirPods Quiet. I don't know. They could have done something, but I think that also lets people buy regular AirPods and not feel like they're not getting the newest AirPods.
It's
so I think that they can then
thing again.
Exactly, they can
Oh.
double dip for that. And then when your kids are dying for AirPods, you got them AirPods. You got the newest AirPods. Oh, you didn't
Right.
say the AirPods.
They should have done a
So
Quiet
that's why.
Place tie-in where they're gonna about to kill you and then you put on noise canceling and all of a sudden you're
No, you
safe.
would have to put it on the aliens.
Yeah, because
And now the aliens are like funking to the beat, but do not know where you are.
because they can't hear you walking around.
Commercial. What an awesome tie-in that would be.
I know you need to get on Apple's marketing team right now, on their
Yeah.
advertising team.
They're dying for that one.
So that was kind of the biggest thing is how well the iPhone did. Maybe
What's the
just a
platform?
little.
Can we talk about the platform news for a sec?
Yeah,
I think that's
that was.
big.
I was gonna
Oh,
move on
sorry.
with. Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's not just that the iPhone did good. They do have some other big things that came up. So Renee, let's talk about the platform
So they
improvements.
Well, not to improve, but they announced 1.5 billion devices active, which is like just the sheer size. And apparently that doesn't include like AirPods. That's iPhone, iPad, Mac, the big
iPads,
devices. And iPhone is close to 1 billion. And that's the thing Apple is selling Apple Watches against. They're selling Apple TV subscriptions against, Apple Arcade subscriptions against. And it's one of those things that messes with the minds of not only like the narratives, like, oh, Apple just wants you to buy a new iPhone, but like with the analysts and everything, because Apple keeps making their phones last longer. And they're like, well, that stops people from buying new ones. And Apple's already, Tim Cook did an okay job explaining this. I feel like he could have gone a little bit further because it's so complicated to understand. But there's a limit of people on Earth and there's no Apple stores on Mars. So like people who have an iPhone and they're mostly upgrading from like iPhone 6. Very few people, except for us tech nerds, buy an iPhone every year. They just don't need to. They're happy with their iPhone 7. But what Apple wants is for you to be able to hand down those older iPhones, because if they're not going to sell it to you, at least they're increasing the size of the iPhone audience. And then when you buy your next iPhone, you give that one away. It's not like it doesn't go in the garbage. And that increases the size of the iPhone market. And maybe your kid gets it or your friend gets it or you sell it, but that person could still buy an Apple Watch. They could still subscribe to Apple Music. They could still do all these things that provide value to Apple. And so I don't think Wall Street understands that yet. I think Wall Street just sees subscription revenue in general, like, oh, we understand something. Yay, it's not hardware. But I think that platform, and the other thing that was really interesting was, and we saw some Android analysts talk about this too, is that when people switch to iPhone, they tend not to go back to Android. Yeah. It's slow, but it's a slow bleed. It's like, Dracula has you on mellow. And all of those just accrete year over year over year, and Apple slowly grows from those. About those things. Yeah. I know Lori had to transcribe.
Once you get used to an ecosphere, you really don't like changing. And because Apple usually has a very, it's comfortable, it's easy to use, it's exceptionally stable. You might not be able to optimize it as much as you could with something else. People won't switch to that. It causes us a lot of anxiety to have to relearn how to do things, and that things are not in the same place that we want to. And especially if you're giving them to your children, then they start really young, learning how to do things on one platform. And then with all the subscription services, now you have this like money cow that's going to be bringing you money year after year.
Oops, money.
I think one of the smartest things Apple probably did was incorporate family sharing so that we could get our kids into the Apple ecosystem, because I'm not going to transition out of talking about the earnings call because there's definitely more to talk about. But another story that had come up was that millennial investors are actually choosing Apple or investing in Apple more than anything else. Let me find this really quick so that we can talk about it, because I found that to be very interesting. It's to me, it comes from, 2 decades or whatever of Apple marketing, and they've done it. We are now at the point where people's kids are old enough to make their own choices about what products they want to buy, and they're buying Apple more than ever before. And an article that came in from TNW was saying that that FANG is what millennials are investing in most. FANG is Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. They're all part of the top 15 things that people are investing in, and Apple is leading the way on that. And it's, to me, that's exactly what Apple was positioning itself to do. 20 years ago, it was sort of almost niche. It was not failing, but it wasn't, it was the Think Differently campaign, that was happening back then was actually because what Apple was saying is like, we know everybody uses PC, so we're different, we're special, we're niche. And now we're at the point where all of those people who loved Apple as young people had children of their own, and their children are now out buying their own products, and they're all buying Apple because that's that's how they grew up. It's sort of the Disney effect, if you will. Like when I was a kid, Disneyland wasn't that popular. It was fine. It was okay. They actually had to like get companies to sponsor rides. I don't know if you remember this or heard anything about this, but I think it was the late 80s or mid to late 80s, there were companies that sponsored rides. So they were getting like money from advertising at Disneyland because they weren't actually making a profit. And look at them now. Look at the Disneyland franchise now. That's because people like me grew up, had kids of our own. We were super fans of Disneyland, and now our kids are super fans of Disneyland, and Apple is doing that same thing.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah,
it's so good. It's like reinventing. It's that thing that Madonna does so well and that Apple's done so well. It's like they were the Apple II company, then the Mac company, then the iPod company, then the iPhone company. And now it's not that they're not the iPhone company, because we still don't know what's coming next. Nobody else has figured that out yet. But they're like, oh, it's my iPhone and my AirPods and my Apple Music, and like it's all the things that go with your iPhone now.
Yeah, and the way Apple kind of creates that ecosystem, I think we might talk about this later, but there was a guy who he unboxes the MacBook Pro rack mount edition and does a little bit of a stress test on it. He's an industry professional in the music industry, and he talks about how I think he said 10 years ago, but maybe it was more than that, he made a decision to start using Apple products for his business. And he says, and now I'm stuck in the ecosystem. So, I mean, maybe not everybody actually appreciates being part of the Apple ecosystem, but I think that's one of the best parts about it, is how comfortably I can sit within the Apple ecosystem. And if you're outside of that, I guess it can seem really,
of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we are happy captives is what you're saying.
Exactly. So I'm going to cough for just a second. Please give me
talk amongst yourselves.
Go
give
for
us a
it.
topic.
Go for it. Everyone.
It's coffee.
Pretend this is not happening.
Dickinson in the
It'll
chat
be
room.
Jim that'll have to take care of that one anyways.
Dickinson in the chat room was talking about a service that lets you bring all your music and videos into the same place. And I think it failed, didn't it? Wasn't it Ultraviolet? And there was another one after that.
Oh,
there was
right.
2 attempts, and I think they both failed at this point.
It was Ultraviolet.
Movies Anywhere, and then Movies Anywhere.
No,
that was the second.
That's what I was going to point out, though, is Movies Anywhere has not failed. Actually, I really appreciate Movies Anywhere, and that is because I can buy a movie on Amazon and watch it in iTunes. I can buy a movie in iTunes and watch it on Amazon Prime. So it offers you this sort of fluidity that just crosses over between these different.
It was Movie Pass that failed. I was getting them conflated.
Oh God, Movie Pass was terrible. that had nothing to do with sharing.
They filed bankruptcy, I think, this week. That's why they got stuck in my head.
Oh, did they finally?
Yeah.
You're done now. Yep.
Do you remember when I was like, Movie Pass is amazing?
Yeah. Well, it was a great idea.
It was amazing.
Didn't pay for it.
We were here using it up, but that's why it was too good to be true.
Literally too good. It was definitely a lesson learned. I got out of it very early on. It was when they first had their first weekend where they couldn't actually buy the tickets for people because they didn't have any more money. That when that happened, I was like, okay, the ship is sinking. I'm leaving this. So yeah.
Movies Anywhere is still US only. Boo.
Sorry.
Renee, I was going to ask you. So my shock, I was thinking, and then I wanted to ask you why, is that services which have gone up by like what 0.2 billion increase, which is still an increase. But I'd thought that it would be more. Is that, do you think, because most of the services that are being offered are free for the year and they have not fully monetize that area for arcade and other services that Apple's offering?
No, I think it's like oftentimes there's idiosyncrasies about a particular quarter. Like, for example, iPad is down because the iPad Pro was announced, and these are all year-over-year numbers. But iPad is down because last year there was a brand new iPad Pro. This year there wasn't. There was a ton of brand new Mac. Like it just, or actually that was 2 years ago. But each quarter is kind of a unique little snowflake. This quarter, I also thought that services would be up, and there's a bunch of theories as to why they're not. One is that free year of Apple TV because nobody had to sign up for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one is that the App Store revenue is plateauing because just like everybody has all the devices and all the apps, and the App Store is not going to be the growth engine it was, just like the iPhone isn't going to be the growth engine it was. I don't know about that because they're still having record days. I still don't know why it's New Year's Day. New Year's Day is a record day for. I could see like Christmas Day because everyone gets their new devices on Christmas Day.
Because after you want to just chill out and listen to music, so you're getting all of the best music. Right?
Why New Year's? It's like I thought they would be sprinkled throughout the next couple of weeks, but it's like everyone's like, New Year's, time to download some apps.
Yeah, we're going to be playing it at the party because we're not hiring a DJ.
No, the night before is the party. This is like you woke up drunk from New Year's. I'm going to download some apps.
You drunk downloaded.
Fair.
No,
fair.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot understand, Renee. I'm exactly like you. I think it should be a Christmas Day thing, and I cannot understand why it's New Year's Day. The only thing that I can think of,
cooking on the holidays for family, you are too stressed to be.
Maybe. My thought is that everybody makes New Year's resolutions on New Year's Day, and there are so many different apps out there that can help you mentally, physically, all across the board. So my thought is that maybe that's what people are doing on New Year's Day that bumps that up. I don't know.
I like that idea.
That's the only thing that comes to mind to me of like why that day in particular.
You're spending the holiday money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And Georgia, I think you're kind of onto something, which is that like during the holidays, on Christmas Day, the day after Christmas, the day after that, you're still too busy. Your family's around. And by New Year's Day, what do you have to do but sit around, watch a float parade, watch some football games, and actually look at your phone? So maybe that's why, that day becomes so important, So one more thing I wanted to talk about was wearables. Tim Cook actually pointed out that 75% of customers are new to the Apple Watch for this quarter. And so what I wanted to point out was you can't have an Apple Watch without an iPhone. Yeah. So though there are probably a huge number of those people were already iPhone people, I also think that the latest Apple Watch has actually been the thing that brought people into the Apple ecosystem, and it has to do with fall detection and ECG monitoring. I think, Georgia, in addition, the always on screen might have been that one thing that people were putting off. And I strongly believe that at this point that there's not only a bunch of just iPhone users that jumped on board with Apple Watch, but that there are people who didn't own an Apple device, or at least didn't own an iPhone, that this year bought the package because they wanted the Apple Watch more than anything. So it's a big deal. I think Apple Watch is huge. And, we used to see a lot of numbers about, the wearables from different companies compared to Apple Watch. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason we don't see those numbers anymore is that there's just no competition anymore. They exist, but it's the numbers for Apple Watch are so high that nobody else can even come close. And I'd love to see that kind of comparison though.
Yeah, exactly. Because the interesting thing though is I did see someone with a Fitbit and I thought it was an Apple Watch, but then they had to apologize. No, it's actually only a Fitbit. But even that apology, I went, oh, that's really like though it's it's like now the cheaper version of trying to be the Apple Watch hopes to compete. But wearables and home is up 30% from last year.
And they admitted that they couldn't make enough Apple Watch Series 3 and AirPods Pro to meet demand. So it would have been higher if they'd forecasted or been able to manufacture better.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's big. It's really big. Yeah, wearables.
The numbers in comparison to the iPhone, but it's like how many people use the Apple wearables, ecosphere now. That's a huge jump.
Yeah. It's huge. Yes.
And did they break it down by, how many it was the pods versus the watch versus?
Yeah, they definitely didn't. They never do a breakdown, but there was a comment. I'm gonna try. Wait, I know. I'm gonna use my command F to try to find. So here we go. I hope this is the right one. No, this was Apple Card. Recently launched. Oh, no, this is right. Now turning to wearables, we had another incredible quarter, setting an all-time record in virtually every market we track around the world. And this product category is now the size of a Fortune 150 company.
Jesus.
So that's big, right? That's
huge. And everyone would be
their
happy
wearables
with that much profit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
10 billion's okay. Like no one's going to squash that on its own. Apple wearables, 10 billion.
So before we move on, Renee, I'm about to move away from the earnings call. Yes. So is there anything else you want to mention before we hit our sponsorship?
I think the last thing is just that Apple looked bullish for the next quarter too, which is always like, yes, this quarter is done, but how do they feel about next quarter? Like, did they give everything away this quarter? And it feels like they're still bullish for next quarter. So that's
the only part though, right, about all of this is that there's definitely going to, like, there's a cap on, like, it's always has to be bigger and better. If not, then we get the 100,000 Apple is doomed.
There is a concern though, like they gave wider ranging guidance than they ever did before because of all the problems with the outbreaks. And they don't know what that's going to do in terms of supply chain and manufacturing and all that.
Which is something I do want to talk about once we come back from the break. It's a bigger deal day by day than we all imagined it to be, including Apple. They even mention it in their earnings call. But before we go on to that, I want to tell you a little bit about Bokes. As you can see behind me for anybody watching, I received these two beautiful bouquets of flowers.
They're so pretty.
They're gorgeous. And this was almost 2 weeks ago now. It was a week and a half ago at least. Oh. They look almost better. I would say they look better than they did when I first got them. Their blooms opened more and they're solid and strong and like nothing is dying on these. They're not going limp. And all I've done is just put some water at the bottom of them. And they've got at least another week or two to go before they're going to start looking like they're wilting. They're absolutely gorgeous. So right now, Bokes is kind of spearheading Valentine's Day. And they want us to talk about Valentine's Day. I don't celebrate it. So I'm just going to read a couple of things straight off the cuff here. Just because I know that it's a big deal that they've got their Valentine's Day specials coming up. So not everyone prefers roses for Valentine's Day. The Bokes company has you covered with a variety of beautiful style bouquets, sweet treats, plants, gifts, and succulents. I'm actually going to hop over to the website right now because I love to look at their floral arrangements. So for their Valentine's Day special, there's actually a button right at the top of the page that just says one-click V-Day roses. You click on it, it immediately gets added to your cart and immediately takes you to the information where you fill out who you want to send it to. It automatically puts the date of delivery as February 14th. So you don't even have to do any work. If you're just like, I need to get some roses sent to somebody right now, click, done. Put in some addresses and you've got it good to go. And Bokes sends out, they deliver these absolutely gorgeous flower arrangements that are sourced by independent plant farmers using sustainable growing practices. They've partnered with farms nearby around their location to have these sent out to you. Most of them are free shipping. You might have to pay extra if you need some last minute shopping, last minute deliveries, which let's see if I'm trying to see their same day delivery. So there are bouquets that you can have delivered that day. So if it's February 14th, and you forgot to send bouquets to somebody, you can at the last minute send some flowers out. It's Bokes.com, BOUQS.com. That's where these come from. So let me get to the nitty gritty. So with their Valentine's Day sale that's going on now, you can get blooms starting at $39. And they work with, I mentioned before that they work with some of the finest eco-friendly farms. Their flowers are sourced directly and arrive fresh and live longer than you would get from the grocery store. That's absolutely true. You can get 25% off your order from the Bokes company by going to bokes.com/iMore using the code iMore at checkout. So that's bokes.com, BOUQS.com/iMore, and use the offer code iMore at checkout. So thank you, Bokes, for sponsoring this week's episode of the iMore Show and for adding some color to my life, which, by the way, they also have a subscription service for as low as, I believe, $36 a month. You can have beautiful bouquets delivered to your door once a month, and I am signing up for that because I love fresh cut flowers. I used to go to the farmer's market every week and just pick up a bouquet for my house. Now I can have them hand delivered. It's beautiful. Bokes.com. And let's move on now. I wanted to talk a little bit about the trouble that is going on with the coronavirus in China. I don't want to be sensationalizing with it or kind of put any kind of fear mongering into the situation, but I think it is important to talk about this right now because Tim Cook did actually speak to how the coronavirus is affecting their supply chain. So let me just quote really quick what he says. "We are following the development of the coronavirus. We're donating to groups that work to contain the outbreak, and we're working closely with our Apple team members and partners in the affected area, and our thoughts are with everyone in the affected region. As we close the books on a record-breaking December quarter, we're already underway." This is moving on to the next thing. So they're pointing out it's important for them to have mentioned that this is affecting things and that they're on top of it. They're kind of paying attention to what's going on. Tim Cook also, when asked to kind of dig a little bit more into the situation, he says, "We've limited they've done a lot to try to help with the region. They do have suppliers in Wuhan. We've limited travel to business critical situations as of last week. This situation is emerging. We're still gathering a lot of data points and monitoring it very closely. As Luca had mentioned, where we have a wider than usual revenue range for the second quarter due to the greater uncertainty." So that's kind of Apple's take on it, is that it is actually something to be kind of looking out for. There's this part of me that wants to go, don't freak out. It's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. Yes, there's a lot of sick people and a lot of people are dying, but it's not going to break Apple. But I also wanted to point out that Apple is saying, actually, we do expect this to have potential to affect our business, especially coming off the end of the Lunar New Year. So it's big. There's also the chip maker, TSMC, is actually saying the coronavirus is not affecting us. There's also some information that Apple is, I'm getting to the article now about that. Apple is boosting their iPhone production, but the coronavirus has created uncertainties. So these are all kind of pointing to the fact that this could have not a negative effect, but just a general effect on Apple coming into the second quarter. Renee, maybe you can talk a little bit about the potential for a iPad event in March and how the coronavirus might have an effect on production of new products coming into this quarter.
Yeah, so I think it's multifaceted. I mean, like, people will quickly point out that SARS was so far at this point in time, SARS was a much worse outbreak than Corona was. We've just dealt with these things now, so we are more careful about them. And it's mostly our reaction and the reaction of places like China, where travel is being locked down and planes are prevented from going. It's all our reaction to the outbreak that's going to determine a lot of this, because if people, went away for the holidays or for New Year and can't get back to the factories, if they close down the factories, all the things that they do to try to minimize viral spread is what's going to stop manufacturing. What that does for the iPad, we'll have to wait and see. Like, the potential is for an iPhone 9 or second generation, less expensive iPad for the Apple tiles. Lori mentioned it. I think Lori or Georgia mentioned at the beginning of the show. The iPad, the next iPad Pro with the better camera. Maybe a 13-inch MacBook Air with a new keyboard, or a 13-inch MacBook Pro or an Air with a new keyboard. All of those things, they can announce them, but if they don't have enough ready to ship, then people get frustrated. That's not usually Apple's way. Unless there's a new developer story for it, they usually announce and then ship very quickly. So I could definitely see them rescheduling if they don't think they'll be able to meet demand quickly enough for the new products they announce.
Yeah, and some factories are going to be closed until around February 10th, as recommended by the Chinese government. An interesting side piece to that is that Apple's Face ID doesn't work with face masks. And so, and you, especially there, you want to make sure that you are wearing your face mask. And,
yes.
And for some people, wearing full face masks with goggles.
Yeah, it needs a triangle from your eyes to nose in order to work. So if you cover your nose, it no longer has that.
It's not going to be fixed. And so they're, Apple's working on maybe fingerprint scanner for them. It's just they're re-looking also at different things that will help improve user experiences if these type of things occur more frequently. So there's also some interesting side notes as the world changes, and then how we use our technology also changes.
Yeah, definitely. So wow, I just forgot what I was about to bring up. Renee, I was actually going to comment on the fact that this idea that you had that they might postpone a March event. That was exactly what I was thinking. Because of the uncertainty of the supply chain, the March event that we all think we're going to get might not happen in March. It might happen at a later month, or maybe not at all.
Well, so they usually have windows. Like they've done early April in the past, but they haven't done May as far as I can recall. Not in recent memory. The next thing would be just to do it at WWDC, and then Lori and I'd have to deal with one of those overjammed WWDCs again, like 2017, where it was just one more thing.
Yeah, which is totally possible.
8 new iPads, 8 new iMacs. Come on, more.
Yep, that's a lot to unpack there if that happens. So, you also pointed out the potential for a new low-cost iPhone. It's currently being called the iPhone 9 around the water cooler, but it had also previously been called the iPhone SE 2. So, Renee, I think you started calling it iPhone 9. Do you have a reason why you think it's more likely to be that?
Apple tends not to reuse names. Like they just use the name once and they move on from it. There's very few that are like something 2, like iPhone 3G 2. You know, I could see it be called like the iPhone SE. You got to be real careful with the letters there. Like you can go wrong real quick when you start adding letters. But like there are other historical names that they could add. I don't think they'd reuse the name SE. Also, the SE implies small to a lot of people. Yeah. And Apple would have to make a new processor that could handle the power envelope of such a small chassis now, because you can't fit an A13 in there. So I think they would want to give it a fresh start. I don't know if iPhone 9 is going to be the name, but it would certainly fit. Like having them missing the iPhone 9 is just weird. And some people are like, oh, well, they can't sell an iPhone 9 in the era of the iPhone 11. I mean, have you met Apple? They can do anything they want.
They can do what they want.
They could call it the iPhone Mother of Dragons if they want to. It's just marketing at that point.
Yeah. Georgia, what do you think about a low-cost iPhone potentially being called the iPhone 9?
I think it's a great idea. I think people, again, Apple's really expensive. I think that would increase the amount of people that are using an Apple phone. I think that for schools, for other people that are trying to do different things with cameras, then it could be a low-cost version of something that you're going to use instead of having iPads. Like, there's so many uses for having an affordable iPhone and that entry-level device if you don't have the amount of money, but you still want to use an Apple product. And because of like, then more people could use, get a watch, because you can get a more affordable but up-to-date phone that's going to be working and being able to deal with all of the updates. I love the idea, and I think that if Apple can go through with it and hopefully in this year, that would be absolutely amazing.
How much do you think it should cost?
Oh, go Renee, you do this. This is Renee's area.
No, I mean, I think the price points are pretty well established. Like I think Apple's going to want something compelling at $399. Maybe it goes to $450, but at that point, they've traditionally, like the iPhone SE was $399. I think that's a really good price point. If they could bring something in at that value that people think is really valuable, I think that's a huge win for them.
So right now the iPhone 8, which to me, this rumored iPhone 9, it's kind of the 8 with some upgrades, with some updates. So it's more in line with the current year's technology on the inside, but more or less is just kind of the iPhone 8 on the outside. It currently sells for $349. So Apple would technically have to charge $50 more for what they're already selling right now to make that $399. Do you think that's something they would do, or do you think maybe they would keep that $349 price point?
I don't know if they need. I think it would be more confusing to have multiple entries at that price point, especially if they look the same and they don't have the same. Like the new one should have way better components, and it's probably not worth it. I mean, they've had really big lineups sometimes, but I just find them way too confusing. Just have something at every $100 for all the different people.
You actually think that Apple will keep the iPhone 8 and introduce the iPhone 9?
No, I think they'll get rid of the 8.
Or they delete it like they did with the 4 for the watch.
Yeah, like you get rid of the 5S and you have the SE.
Yeah. No, I see that too, but I actually think that, well, they might go ahead and up it to $399 as the entry level price. Call it the iPhone 9. It's better than the iPhone 8 because it'll have better internals. I think marketing wise, Apple, this is the right thing to do. And I think I've mentioned this before, that Apple has actually basically failed at having a low cost phone, an entry level phone in the past with the iPhone C and the iPhone SE. They didn't hit, they didn't win. They were not big sellers, but you know what is always a big seller is a phone that's a couple of years old that they still sell at a lower price point. People love that. People buy the iPhone 8 all the time. They were buying the iPhone 7 up until last year. The iPhone XR, it's still on the market, but you're not hearing as much about it anymore now that the 11 came out. I kind of think the XR, which was kind of the low cost phone for the iPhone XS year, it's not winning. So calling this the iPhone 9 removes that implication that it's a low cost phone. And I think that's what people didn't like about the other ones, is that they wanted to buy an Apple phone and didn't want it to be a low cost phone. So now if they're buying an iPhone 9 that kind of looks like all of the other phones, it has a home button. It looks just like the iPhone 8. It's actually newer than the iPhone 8, so it's better than that. It doesn't look like the iPhone 11, but it's it's pretty close to what the iPhone 11 looks like. It has a home button and things like that. I think that's a perfect way to market this, and they might actually finally succeed at that entry level phone instead of kind of randomly attempting to present us with these brightly colored low-cost phones that nobody ends up buying.
Right.
Or at least
it shows up that this is the low-cost phone because they're brightly colored and everyone knows. The only problem I would see, though, with the numbering is that, unfortunately, with it being 9 and will be at the 12, people will want the latest number. If they did something like it was the, 12B or something like that, then more people would probably want to buy it because it's a 12, and that's better than the 7, the 8, the 9 in there. Again, just because of the numbering for that, we are that superficial that would probably have more people, especially kids, being like, no, I have the 12, you have the 11, I have the 12.
That was the genius of the SE, was that it took it out of the numbering. The biggest confusion I would see is that the 9 would be priced lower than the 7 and the 8. The X wouldn't really matter. The 8 would be gone, but I think the 7 would still be there. And then why is the iPhone 9 like cheaper? Is it better? Is it worse? If it's better, why is the 7 more expensive? Like the brilliance of the SE was that it took it out of the numerical sequencing.
Right.
But at the same time, that kind of like my argument is that giving it a non-numbered name, it puts a mark on it as like, this is the cheaper one.
It's a scarlet letter is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Also, that's the marketing. Like, they were so smart with the marketing with the SE, is because they found 2 addressable markets. It wasn't just for people who wanted a less expensive iPhone. It was for people who wanted a smaller iPhone, and that's a premium customer base. There was like a bunch of real like wealthy nerds who wanted them and still want a smaller iPhone. I'm not looking at one too hard right now, but I know not a wealthy, but I know like a well-off nerd who would spend almost anything to get a modern, smaller iPhone.
Oh yeah.
And this one, the pitch would be similar. It'd be, yes, we know some people want a cheaper iPhone, but we also know some people just want their damn home button back on a modern iPhone.
Yeah.
And here you go. It has everything else, and it gives you your home button back.
I can see a lot of people buying it just for the home button. Like
maybe
I want
they'll call
both.
it the iPhone Home.
I want both. I want to have the home button, and I want to be able to have Face ID.
I think that's one of the rumors that in the future.
Both,
maybe 2021.
I won't probably get it, but I want that. I want that to be on the newest model phone, to be able to have the option, because sometimes you are doing something and you cannot look at your phone. And that's really annoying. I never want to have to type in a passcode unless I've done an update.
Oh, I mean, you were just talking about that with the virus in China, and a lot of people having to wear face masks. There's an immediate fix of, well, I can't use my face right now, so I'm just going to keep using my finger until I don't have to wear a face mask anymore. So having that option for both, which I think there's a Samsung phone that does that. Renee, maybe you can help me. You're much better at Android devices than I am. Is the Samsung Galaxy 10, does it have a Face ID and Touch ID? Not I mean their version of it.
They're super complicated. They had iris scanning on a previous one and fingerprint. They got rid of the iris scanning, and now they do photo, like they match you the picture of your face. But like if you hold up, like if I held this up to Georgia right now, it would unlock because it just sees her face. It doesn't do actual face scanning. There's a rumor that there's been a rumor for a couple of years that Apple's going back to both fingerprint, like long before coronavirus, is going back to an underscreen and face scanner, just because it would be more transparent. Like it wouldn't matter if you picked it up or you looked at it, it would just unlock. And that's like the whole goal here, is that we shouldn't have to care about authentication at all. It should just happen unless there's a problem, then it can challenge us. But like these, and as you build more of those, like I would love if they had voice as well, so that if like, and Nuance has been doing this for a while, if it recognizes your voice, and yes, you have to be careful because people can play a tape recording of your voice, so, but like as one more factor. So like if it has my fingerprint, but doesn't hear my voice, like, I just think all this stuff is still a big problem that can be better solved.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually just thinking about how locking or unlocking your phone, who would have thought before there was a smartphone, who would have thought how important how you opened your phone would be? Like when I got my first iPhone, I didn't put a passcode on it. My best friend used to put funny pictures on my phone all the time because he was making fun of me for never putting a lock on my phone, because I just thought, why would I even want to do that? No, like, I don't care. Like my phone is with me all the time. I'm not worried about that. But over the years, the ubiquity of phones and people stealing phones and things like that has made it so important for us to be able to like kind of lock it down when it's not, right in front of us in our face. And so these biometric means of unlocking our phones have become so important, in that we want the security of a locked phone, but the convenience of not actually really having to do much to unlock the phone. It's interesting.
We want it both ways.
Yeah. And I do think, I don't think that it would be difficult to have the option for two, like, especially if the fingerprint scanner was just under the surface, there wasn't a button. I mean, maybe your screen had a little identifier, like the way there's a line at the bottom of the iPhone 10 through 11, that just lets you know, here's where you slide up. Maybe if there was just a little dot that was like, here's where you would put your thumb if you want to unlock your phone or something like that. Because something I've noticed that I will have my phone just resting on a table, and I have to lift it up if I want to unlock it. And, that's like that one tiny little extra thing. Like if I could just put my finger down and unlock my phone just like that, that'd be so much nicer, instead of having to actually lift it and look at it. And my hands are busy sometimes when that pops up, and like, oh, now I have to go. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's the little things. I don't know that we'll see that anytime soon, maybe 2021, but not this year for sure. So let's see. Oh, actually, let me mention, we're almost done here, but I want to mention two things. One of them being the European Union did actually vote to standardize charging ports. that doesn't mean that it's official that the regulation exists. In fact, actually, what the EU has voted on is that they are now going to they are now asking the European Commission to adopt new regulations to force the issue. So it's not just immediately switched on, but they're hoping that the new regulation should be adopted by this summer. So Renee, with that in mind, do you think that Apple was already working on USB-C for the iPhone 12 or the next flagship iPhone that we're expecting in the fall? Or do you think that this means Apple's got a lot to do to try to catch up and make the next phone USB-C?
So I think people are still misreading it. So last time I read it, and I saw a couple other people notice this too, they were talking about the plug-in side, like the part you plug into the wall.
The part that goes into the wall, not the part that goes into the phone.
Yeah, so like, and Apple started replacing with the iPhone 11 already. For the first time, you get a Lightning to USB-C cable, and you get a USB-C. Now it's unclear. Like the original filing made it sound like that. The more recent coverage, and I don't know if
more like it's going to be
the regulation is actually that, or because people are just all making the wrong assumptions because panicking is so much better for sensational clicky views. So there, if it is the latter, if it is just the power plug end, then Apple is fine because they've moved on. They're increasingly moving products away from those style of adapters. If it is for everything, I think it's like the EU is great. It does some wonderful things for a lot of people in a lot of ways. But when it comes to technology, they're almost like California with its new contractor work thing. It's like people who don't understand it are making the rules, and they're making it in a way that is incredibly harmful to a lot of people. And we saw that with like the link policy. Oh, we think newspapers aren't getting paid for their stuff, so anytime you link to them, you've got to pay them. It's like, I run a blog, idiot. That's the whole point of the web, is to link to things. What they do with it once they get there is their business. But like you're going to break the entire web, and they are. And we saw that like with GDPR, the way it was implemented, companies just stopped putting up websites there. And this with the browser ballot for Internet Explorer, oh no, you've got to show them the option to download Schleipnir. You know, it's like, I don't even understand what you're talking about anymore. IE hasn't been the most popular browser for a decade, and no thanks to you. So this too, it means like, let's say they enact this law and they say, okay, it's micro USB. Everyone has to support micro USB now. What is Europe going to do? And maybe they're enlightened enough to say it's got to be USB-C. And then the USB consortium goes, we are about to announce USB-D that has all these extra features. It's going to take us 5 years to move it through the EU Parliament. Or let's say Apple goes, we've got Lightning 2, and you can either charge with a cable or without a cable. And they're like, can't put it in. Everyone in America is getting it. All you suckers in Europe, sorry. Like, I think it's important, like, if you want to tackle e-waste, tackle e-waste. Don't make the mistake of thinking you not understanding technology and regulating it is going to tackle e-waste.
Yeah, because I think...
Yeah, I think that it's just that thought that for them, it's a step in the right to, like, having it all kind of universal is probably a good idea anyways. Again, they can battle it out on what it will be, because yes, the resolution does look like they are looking at the main ways of charging ports and wanting to, like, we believe that it was to the wall, and now it does seem to be what is going to be in your phone is also going to be, they're looking for something that's more universal. So yeah, it might be a little bit worse for our technology, but
and what does it mean? Like USB-C, it's like, oh, because right now people are so confused by USB-C. We've had to write so many articles because first a bunch of cables were actually dangerous, but then it's like, oh, USB PD that actually does power delivery and can charge faster. Oh, but this won't let you take your video signal out. You have to get this cable. Oh, that's Thunderbolt 3, not just USB-C. And just like litigating the port of it just seems like it's, again, it's like George and I lived through all the the laws in Quebec that tried to stop you from using radar detectors. And in the end, it was illegal to use them, to sell them, to buy. It was not illegal to make them. It was just illegal to do everything else. And just outlaw making them. Pick a simple law that is helpful to people.
And with the USB-C, both of you are so right that the key here is that it stifles innovation, because there will be a better USB something someday in the future. But if the European Union enforces USB-C only, no one wants to even try to do anything better, because they're always going to be stuck with they know that the entirety of Europe is going to say you can't use this in our country. So why would I even create be working toward a better technology when having to force the European Union to make rule changes just because I have a new technology. That's just overwhelming. So it's definitely a huge disappointment to see that they actually they decided to go forward with this technology stifling thing. I think somebody had pointed out, Renee, it might have even been you, that originally when the European Union had put this out as a recommendation, they were sort of asking tech companies to get universal. It was micro USB.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what if micro USB was the only thing you could use on your phone from now today? That would have been awful. And they didn't enforce anything. So, most people went to USB-C, and frankly, the iPhone and, maybe your AirPods and AirPods Pro are still, no, actually AirPods Pro are USB-C. So your AirPods and Powerbeats Pro are still Lightning, but everything else is USB-C. And I'm pretty sure that if not this year, Apple would have been heading toward USB-C in the near future for its iPhones, because the company knows that USB-C is superior to all of the other ways of connecting things, and everybody wants USB-C on their phone. They have for a couple of years now. It would have happened.
We nerds do. Everyone else is like, you already screwed me with the dock connector, Apple. You try to take Lightning and force me to buy all my cables again. I'm going to sue you. Your dogs.
But I guess I'm on the opposite side. Like, I am not that bothered by having a universal connecting port. I would love for them to choose one that's kind of ahead of the game, and then be able to change it, because I have that box filled with different charging cables that I keep. That's like, the old box of keys that we used to have just in case I need this key. I have that because I'm not sure what I need to charge with what. And it just sits there gathering dust. Like, so I have so much e-waste in my own home. And I'm like, you know what? Like, there is nice to have like one connector to rule them all. I'm kind of the Lord of the Rings way of going about this. And so I can charge everything with one thing. I brought my old MacBook Air home, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a charger for this. I have how many laptops in my house?
Yep.
Like, too many. And I'm like, I have to search through the box in hopes that I'm going to be able to charge my tech when I bring it around. So I'm like, you know what? It'll be nice whenever someone wants a charge that I could actually help them, and vice versa. So I'm kind of on the thing of, Apple will deal with it. Out of all of the things, it's not changing the way my phone works. Hopefully, I want most things to be like Qi charged and wireless anyways. I like to be able to use it, and I'm on the board with, you know what? Go EU. I'm okay with this.
Well, that is wonderful.
Until a USB-B is announced with Baby Yoda capability.
Listen, if it helps my phone glow, or Baby Yoda appears in 3D to be able to be my personal assistant, because I have this angerish relationship, an abusive relationship with Siri, maybe I'd be on board.
What if Siri started talking like Baby Yoda?
No, it has to do more than talk to it, because then I'm going to be angry and hateful towards Baby Yoda. And that would be a sad
we don't want that. No. So we are actually at the end of our hour, but let me remind everyone that if you bought your device between an Apple device that's, let's start over. Let me remind everyone that if you bought a supported isn't the word I'm thinking of. Eligible. Okay, let me try that one more time. Let me remind everyone, if you bought an eligible device between September 10th and November 1st of 2019, today is your last day to activate that trial for 1 year. So
can you tell them what day today be it, just because they may watch it later?
There are some people who may not hear this until tomorrow. So today, January 31st. So hopefully you hear this before tomorrow and you have already activated that, because as of tomorrow, February 1st, you can no longer activate that free 1 year trial. So if you've been kind of putting it off just because you feel like putting it off, or you forgot or something like that, do it now. Do it today, January 31st. If you're listening to this tomorrow, after tomorrow, sorry. All right. We are done. We're at the end of our hour. Thank you so much for sitting in and talking about all of the wonderful things that Apple has done in this last quarter, because it is absolutely not doomed and people need to stop saying that. So It's been a great ride. Thank you to the huge group of people that are actually watching us live. I think it's probably twice as much as we usually do. So thanks for everybody who popped in and watched us live. I know we were an hour late, but I won't blame anybody for why that happened.
My bad.
But thank you for being flexible and joining us today. It's really great to see you all talking in there. Thanks to Jim Metzendorf. Once again, he makes us sound wonderful. Those coughs that I've been doing this entire show, it's still being recorded. Sorry, Jim. And he has to take those out so that the replay of this doesn't have all that annoying stuff in it. So thank you, Jim, for everything you've done. And thank you to all of our listeners who check in with us every week and listen to our show. We love having you talk to us on Twitter, and we love just knowing that you're out there listening to us. So have a great week. And this has been the iMore Show. And goodbye. Yay.